It was Christmas Eve at 7:45 p.m. and I was standing at a bank counter trying not to fall apart. The marble floor felt cold through the thin soles of my shoes. The lights were too bright, too clean, too quiet for a place where a woman and her children had just lost everything. My name is Claire Whitman. I am 35 years old, and in that moment I had $12 to my name. Emma was holding my left hand so tightly my fingers had started to go numb. She was 9 years old and trying very hard to be brave, but her lower lip would not stop trembling. Noah had his small arms wrapped around my right leg, his face pressed into my coat because he could not stop crying. He was 6 and kept whispering that he was cold. Most families were home by their Christmas trees by now. Pajamas, hot chocolate, children waiting for Santa. We were standing in a bank that was about to close with nowhere to sleep and nowhere to go. 2 hours earlier I had a house. A real house with bedrooms and wrapped presents under the tree. A house where my children believed Christmas morning would still be magic. Then their father showed up with another woman and a moving truck and told us we had 1 hour to leave. I tried not to cry as I stood at the counter. I dug through my purse anyway, hoping anything might help us survive the night. My wallet was empty except for 12 crumpled dollars. That was everything I had left. Then my fingers touched something plastic at the very bottom of a pocket I never used. A debit card. Old, scratched, faded from years of being forgotten. My mother gave me this card 6 years ago when she was dying. She pressed it into my hand in a hospital room and told me not to use it unless I had nothing left. Nothing left. I walked up to the counter and handed it to the banker. His name tag said Thomas Granger. I asked him to check if there was any money on it. He looked at the card once, then again more carefully. His fingers froze above the keyboard. The color drained from his face. He leaned closer to the screen, then looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. Then he lowered his voice and told me I needed to come with him to his office immediately. Right now. As I followed him down the hallway with my children clinging to me, I felt fear and hope collide in my chest. Standing there on Christmas Eve with nothing left, I did not know yet if this card would save us. But I knew my life was about to change. Before I was the woman shaking in a bank on Christmas Eve, I was someone else. I was a girl who believed in her own talent. I met Ryan Whitaker 17 years ago at a small local art exhibit in Ohio. I was 20 and still in design school, and one of my illustrations had been chosen to hang on the wall. I remember standing there that night pretending to be confident, while silently hoping no one would ask me questions I could not answer. Ryan stood in front of my work for a long time, too long for a stranger. When he finally turned toward me, he smiled and said something that stayed with me for years. "You made this. You are going to be someone important one day." No one had ever spoken to me like that before. He sounded certain, like my future was obvious to him, even when I could not see it myself. He was already working in real estate. Confident, well-dressed, full of plans. When we started dating, he talked about building something big, and he said he wanted me beside him when he did it. When we got married, I had 1 year left of college. Ryan said finishing school did not make sense anymore. Why waste time and money when I could focus on us? He said he would take care of everything. At the time, it sounded like love. I left school. I worked briefly, then stayed home when Emma was born. Ryan said it was best for the family, best for the kids, best for our image. So I became the invisible structure of our lives. I managed schedules. I stretched groceries. I remembered birthdays. I stayed up with sick kids and woke up early to pack lunches. I was the calendar, the backup plan, the safety net. Ryan's business grew. Bigger houses, better cars, longer hours. Every success he had rested on a life I was holding together quietly at home. But somewhere along the way, the man who once called me talented stopped seeing me at all. And I did not notice it happening until it was already too late. Ryan did not become cruel all at once. That is the part people do not talk about. It happened slowly in ways that were easy to explain away, easy to excuse, easy to blame on stress or work or money. At first it was little things. He started handling all the finances because he said it was easier that way. He asked me to let him manage the accounts. He said numbers stressed me out and he was better at it. I believed him. If I needed money, I had to ask, not because we were struggling, but because that was how it was set up. Grocery money, school supplies, gas. I would explain what it was for and wait. He never said no, he just made sure I felt uncomfortable asking. If I bought the wrong brand, he commented. If I spent too much, he sighed. If I questioned anything, he reminded me that I did not understand business. Then the compliments stopped. If the house was clean, he noticed the one thing that was not. If dinner was good, he ate silently. If I dressed up, he asked why I was trying so hard. Over time, I learned how to shrink myself. I stopped talking about art because he called it a hobby. I stopped talking about ideas because he interrupted. I stopped disagreeing because it was easier to agree. I became careful, quiet, efficient. My mother noticed before I did. One night she stayed late after dinner. Ryan had gone into his office without clearing his plate. She followed me into the kitchen and asked me a question that landed heavy in my chest. "Are you happy?" I told her yes, because that is what good wives say. She did not argue. She just looked at me and asked one more question. "What did he give up for you?" I could not answer. Not because I did not want to, but because there was nothing to say. I did not know then that she was already watching him closely, that she was already worried, that she was already planning. I only knew that something in my life felt wrong, and I did not know how to name it. And when you cannot name a problem, it has a way of owning you. Ryan told me he wanted a divorce on a Tuesday night, like he was announcing a change in weather. No warning, no conversation, no attempt to fix anything. "I want a divorce, Claire." He already had a lawyer. He already had papers. He had already decided what my life would look like without me having any say in it. In court, I sat quietly while strangers talked about my marriage like it was a failed business deal. They described my 15 years at home as a lack of contribution, no income, no career, no assets in my name. The word useless was never spoken that day, but it hung in the air anyway. Ryan's lawyer said I was entitled to minimal support. He said Ryan had very little personal income. He said there were no significant assets to divide. I remember gripping the edge of the table, trying not to cry. I wanted to explain what those years looked like from the inside. The nights, the sacrifices, the way I had held everything together so Ryan could build his career. But the language of the courtroom did not care about any of that. The judge signed the agreement. I was given a small monthly payment and a deadline. I had until early January to move out of the house. We even put it in writing. I walked out of the courthouse feeling numb, but telling myself it would be okay. I still had time. I would find a place. I would protect the kids from the worst of it. What I did not know was that Ryan had been planning something else. Something faster. Something crueler. And he chose Christmas Eve to do it. Christmas Eve started too quietly. Emma and Noah were at the kitchen table eating sandwiches when I heard a truck outside. A deep engine sound followed by another vehicle pulling in behind it. My stomach dropped. Ryan was not supposed to be there. We had an agreement. January, 2 more weeks. I looked out the window and saw his black SUV. Then I saw the moving truck. Ryan stepped out first like he owned the street. Madison followed him wearing expensive boots and a coat that looked untouched by real winter. She did not look at the house like it was my home. She looked at it like a project. I opened the door before they could knock. "What are you doing here, Ryan? You are not supposed to be here yet." He smiled, but it was not the smile I married. It was thin and sharp. "Change of plans, Claire. My lawyer found a clause in the agreement. I can take possession immediately if I give notice. This is your notice." He walked past me into the house like I was furniture. Madison followed him without a word, already scanning the space. I felt my hands start to shake. "It is Christmas Eve," I said. "The kids' presents are under the tree. Just let us stay one night." "One night." Ryan laughed. "You should have thought about that before wasting 15 years being useless." Emma was standing halfway down the stairs. She heard him. I saw it happen, something small but permanent breaking behind her eyes. Noah came running down calling for his father. "Daddy, are you staying for Christmas?" Ryan did not even bend down. "No, I am moving in with Madison." "But this is our house," Noah said, confused. "Not anymore, kid." Ryan checked his watch. "You have 1 hour. Take personal items only. Everything else stays." Then he waved the movers inside. Strangers walked through my home carrying boxes and furniture. Madison told them where to put things. She did not ask, she pointed. Ryan walked to the Christmas tree. Our tree, the one we decorated together. Noah had made a paper angel in school and placed it at the top. Ryan reached up, pulled it off, and crumpled it in his hand. This junk goes too. He tossed it into the fireplace. I did not scream. I did not cry. I went upstairs and packed clothes with shaking hands while Emma helped Noah choose what toys to take. He kept asking why Santa would not know where we were sleeping. I did not have an answer. When the hour was up, Ryan stood by the door watching us leave. I carried bags. Emma carried Noah. We left wrapped gifts behind, stockings, shoes, a life. As we stepped into the cold, Emma looked back once. I will never forget her face. That was the moment I stopped being afraid. That was the moment I knew something inside me had changed forever. That is how we ended up in the bank. Back under those bright lights with my children clinging to me and the clock ticking toward closing time. I handed the old card to the banker and waited. Mr. Granger studied it longer than he should have. He turned it over slowly, then typed something into his computer. He stopped, leaned closer, typed again. His face changed. Not confusion, not doubt. Recognition. He looked up at me and lowered his voice. "Ma'am, please come with me." I felt Emma tighten her grip on my hand. "Is something wrong?" I asked. Mr. Granger stood up quickly and came around the counter. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "Something is very right." He led us down a hallway marked private offices. The kids stayed close to me as if the floor might disappear if they let go. Inside his office, he closed the door and turned his screen so I could see it. I did not understand what I was looking at. Numbers, names, dates. "This account is linked to a trust," he said carefully. "It was established years ago by your mother, Eleanor Whitman." My breath caught. Your mother left instructions," he continued. "Very clear ones. This card was only to be used when you had nothing left." I felt dizzy. "She also left a safety deposit box in your name," Mr. Granger said. "I have been instructed to release it only if you came in person with this card." I sat down because my legs would not hold me. Emma and Noah were given hot chocolate by a teller who smiled like she knew better than to ask questions. "Your mother was very specific," Mr. Granger said gently. "She wanted to make sure you and the children were protected if things went badly." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were documents, bank statements, letters, legal forms. "Your mother planned for this moment," he said. "She did not leave you helpless." For the first time since Ryan laughed at me in my own living room, I felt something other than fear. I felt steadiness. I felt like someone had reached back through time and taken my hand. Whatever waited in that safety deposit box, I knew one thing for certain. My mother did not leave me nothing. She left me a way forward. Mr. Granger placed a sealed envelope on the desk and slid it toward me. It had my name written across the front in my mother's handwriting. Claire. The letters were uneven, like her hands were shaking when she wrote it. "She asked that you read this when you were ready," he said. "When you had nothing left." He left us alone. The room was quiet except for the hum of the heater and Noah's slow breathing as he leaned against my side. Emma watched me closely, like she already understood that whatever was in that envelope mattered. I opened it carefully. My mother's voice filled my head as I read. "My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and it means you finally saw the truth about Ryan. I wish with everything in me that I had been wrong." My chest tightened. She wrote about the way Ryan watched people, about how he treated kindness like a weakness, about how he spoke of money like it was power instead of responsibility. She wrote that 4 years earlier she had started hearing his name in conversations that made her uneasy. Old accounting friends, quiet warnings, numbers that did not add up. So she started paying attention. She hired a private investigator named Daniel Cho. She did not tell me because she knew I would defend Ryan. She knew I was not ready. She discovered accounts that were never disclosed, payments that were hidden, properties bought through shell companies, money moved just before tax filings. She discovered the divorce plan before I ever knew there was a problem. She wrote that Ryan paid his attorney under the table to shape the outcome, that the settlement was never honest, that it was designed to leave me dependent and afraid. But the part that broke me was not the evidence. It was what she wrote next. Claire, you are not useless. You gave up your art, your education, and your independence for a man who did not deserve the sacrifice. That does not erase your value. It only proves your capacity to love. She wrote that she created the trust not as revenge, but as protection. That she sold everything she owned to make sure my children would never sleep in fear. She wrote that she believed one day I would remember who I was. At the bottom of the letter was one final instruction. Call Diane Holloway. She already knows everything. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. Emma climbed into my lap without asking. Noah wrapped his arms around both of us. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I did not feel like a woman who had lost. I felt like a daughter who had been held even after death. My mother did not save me by fighting Ryan herself. She saved me by believing I would be strong enough to finish what she started. 3 days after Christmas, I walked into the offices of Diane Holloway. I was wearing the only professional outfit I still owned. It felt strange to sit in a glass building overlooking the city after sleeping on a borrowed couch only days earlier. Diane Holloway stood when I entered the room. She was calm, direct, the kind of woman who did not waste words or soften truth. Your mother was exceptional, she said, and she was right. She opened the folder and began reading. The room went quiet except for the sound of paper turning. After 10 minutes, she looked up at me. This is not complicated, she said. This is fraud, asset concealment, court manipulation, and it is documented. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was not fear. What happens now? I asked. We act quickly, she said, today. She explained it in simple terms. First, an emergency motion to freeze all of Ryan's assets. Every account, every property, domestic and offshore, no warning. Then a petition to reopen the divorce based on deception and bribery. She made the calls in front of me. By the time I left her office, the paperwork was filed. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Ryan. I answered and pressed record. What did you do? He shouted. The police were at the house. My accounts are frozen. I cannot access anything. I kept my voice steady. I told the truth. There was silence on the line, long enough for me to hear him breathing. You do not know what you are doing, he said finally. You are ruining me. No, I said quietly. You did that yourself. He started yelling. Threats, insults, panic bleeding through every word. Then I told him about the evidence. The accounts. The payments. The letter. You could hear the moment his confidence collapsed. This is impossible, he said. Nobody knew about that. My mother did. The call ended with him swearing and promising consequences. 2 hours later, Diane called me back. Madison left, she said simply, packed her things and walked out. I sat down and closed my eyes. I did not feel joy. I felt relief. For the first time in years, his power was cracking. And for the first time in my life, I was no longer asking for permission to stand. 2 months later, I walked back into the same courtroom where my life had been taken apart. But this time I did not feel small. Diane sat beside me, calm and focused. My hands rested in my lap, steady for the first time I could remember. Ryan sat across the room with a court-appointed lawyer. The confidence was gone. The expensive suit did not fit the way it used to. He kept his eyes on the table like looking up might expose him. The judge entered and the room stood. She did not rush. She spoke slowly and clearly, like every word mattered. Mr. Whitaker, you deliberately hid assets from this court, she said. You manipulated financial records, bribed legal counsel, and presented a false narrative to strip your spouse of her rights. She listed the evidence piece by piece: offshore accounts, shell companies, undisclosed properties, payments that could not be explained. Ryan tried to interrupt. The judge raised her hand. You will not speak, she said. You have spoken enough. She turned to me. Mrs. Whitman, this court failed you during the original proceedings. That failure is now corrected. The original settlement was voided in its entirety. Ryan was ordered to pay restitution, support, damages. Full custody of Emma and Noah was awarded to me. Any visitation would be supervised and reviewed separately. Ryan stood up shaking. "This is not fair," he said. "She does not deserve this." The judge looked at him steadily. "You built your life on deception," she said. "This is the consequence." The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courtroom, Diane hugged me briefly. "Your mother would be proud," she said. I nodded because words were not coming. 3 weeks later, Ryan was sentenced in criminal court. Prison time. Fines, an ending he never planned for. I did not attend that hearing. I did not need to. I had already walked out free. Life did not become perfect overnight, but it became mine. With the settlement and my mother's trust, I bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, just safe, warm, ours. Emma chose a room painted soft purple and covered the walls with drawings. Noah picked dinosaurs and rockets and insisted on sleeping with his door open every night for a while. I let him. Laughter slowly came back into the house, not forced, not careful, real. A week after we moved in, I returned to the bank alone. Mr. Granger greeted me with a smile and placed a small box on the table. It was wrapped in blue paper just like my mother had described. I sat there for a long time before opening it. Inside was a photograph of me at 20 years old, standing beside my artwork. Bright eyes, paint on my hands, a woman who believed she was allowed to take up space. Beneath the photo was a thin gold key. Attached to it was a note in my mother's handwriting. "For your studio." She had bought it years ago, a small workspace in my name only, a place no one could take from me because it had never belonged to anyone else. I cried in the car after that, not from grief, from recognition. I turned the spare room in our new house into a studio. I painted again, slowly at first, then with hunger. I took design work, then more. Clients came. Confidence followed. One evening, Emma watched me work and said, "Mommy, you look like yourself again." She was right. Ryan wanted control. He wanted obedience. He wanted me erased. What he never understood was that I was never weak. I was just quiet. And quiet women remember everything. If you are listening to this and you feel small or invisible or dependent, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not useless. You are not late. And starting over is not failure. Sometimes the greatest revenge is rebuilding so well that the past can no longer reach you. If this story meant something to you, please like, share, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and what starting over looked like for you. You never know who might need your story tonight.